Although the species value nature's system, clocks of time, forever nature's course remains yet lost. Please just remind. Hello, President Trump. I appreciate your every chief, and especially your ability, uncommonly, to admit that and how we are in a tactically ulterior from natural value to nature system. And this is within as the value of trade agreements here and there, as every modern nation, not only ignoring how we were all forced to this from tactically denatured relationships to nature ourselves in within as means, but in other words, what everyone is missing was the original breaching organized crime method. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a police force, I'm not a criminal. Breaching organized crime method against each age of fact-treating nature. Simultaneously, consciously, within as that, as value, as correlation nature, which is a Trinity. Which is value, which was before the finite, as this demonstrated by being the order to and as the value of all finite, actively and progressively at the same time, further progressively, the cause of positive value nature progression here, as one nature of it in relationship to the identity of space's perfect value progression, or as a force from here, as negative value nature to us being another nature positive to it, in relationship to the distinct, concentrated, temporary space nature, forever, temporary, lasting, forever nature, immediate space nature value of Earth, wherein how, and as value was is, by the identity it was is, before, then as the value, the finite value of itself, then as the active value of itself, and as the value of that progression, too. So 5 pillars. 5 parts of the yin yang, simultaneously painting 5 natures as value, simultaneously painting 3 natures as value, simultaneously, same way, the 5 pillars of Islam, painting 5 values as nature, because all the controversial parts of the Quran and all the controversial parts about the Old Testament are only because they're not interpreting the first part of them. So they're demonstrating if you can't interpret the first part of them, this pseudo-positive locks the hard part, the demonstrably not in defense of finite human rights, group human rights, because it's in defense of top-down value, which everyone's ignoring with value nature systems tactically ulterior. When these religions are about the fact-treatment nature, positive premises treatments by and as a value relationship to the identity of space that has nothing to do with the sensibilities of people told to value themselves on how industry. See, but it's worse than that, because it was how this was engineered, maintained each age of fact treatment nature. The most sophisticated state roles within as what holds really. Everyone measured life progression, cover up nature tools in relationship to tactically denatured modern infrastructure. Since before they had cars, with slavery laws against our founders, who they wrote into books. They kept the narratives. They only could do damage control to that. Our founders had to hide their roles and their own free speech by forced speech, forced theater. It was an engineered criminal insidiousness nature. They had no want for slaves. They had the records about them are recorded criminally foreign influenced. But no one understands it because they don't each branch only understands through what they were raised as victim-predator reactions. Only let realize the same way they were originally. So we come to the gaming system. See, the president, people forget the presidents don't stop because we're forced to keep going with and as a reliance upon a value nature system from tactically denatured relationship to nature and to safety with this where and as and how we were originally and stay negotiated with terrorism in every modern nation, and that as the with and as the value of nations needed to say they don't do that and needing to firmly not do that for good reasons, but too late because the base can't defend that. In other words, their roles with and as fake sides, with and as these groups and other that they go against at the same time. These jails are recorded in collusion with areas crimes, with courts, and with overt criminal enterprises. Other nations agreed upon relationships with doctors of psychology, associated with triage relationships to hospitals, to healthcare, to the nature of evidence reception standard manifest because it's a relationship to each other, but each other's through a uncharged, like if you put a different kind of element in a fire, the fire color changes. If you hold this, the breaching organized crime method knew that it would cause our nature's relationship to itself to be and to value more and more criminal cities this nature. This is what the Old Testament is about, which is about English was revealed before Jesus Christ was born. In English, Alpha, Jesus Christ says he is the Alpha, he is the Omega. That's cipher. Decipher is about the alphabet, about what stole English that was revealed by nature of sciences before they were criminally re-engineered. They're revealed by the science that knows how to cause evolution, by understanding the value before and as the finite being individual, either sex, same value. Then being sex distinctly and non-distinctly at the same time to see this. To see that the identity of space, radical correlation. This is every religion does not deny this. The only reason that people do is because they have physical delusions with what religions mean. With sequence shift too. With the nature of the beginning of the Quran and of the beginning of the Old Testament. Because if they didn't attach physical delusions from the rest of the stories without understanding the value right at the beginning, then they wouldn't be able to justify the premise treatments, which is tied to defenses of natures that the defenses of themselves are manifest, not letting the worst crimes reported through time, recorded against each age of fact treatment nature simultaneously. See, people from different areas think this is different things. They think it's racism because this engineer knew it would have to keep it blamed on other things and thought other things because they're exploiting how we are a fact treatment nature and time and as needs to stay. We want to be positive. They're controlling the sensibilities with recorded, degenerate, internation shared criminality with with healthcare, doctors, recorded with crimes with various natures of courts at once, with areas, with databases, with interbranch police, with databases, campuses with databases, tied to the method that facilitated this originally to maintain it because it knew how our reaction, how it would be in its criminal and seditious nature defense of itself, blaming on others, and needing to hide that offensively, how facilitated to it, not understanding, but through life progressions, and but as life progression cover up nature's needs and roles. Unhand our souls. You see, every modern nation, they say, oh, Mao, they jump to go Mao. Mao was trying to fight out of the trap of slavery. It was before even the Civil War here. That was North and South still entrenched here. George Washington had to leave slavery of his own self entrenched in Hartford, Connecticut, in Wethersfield, Connecticut, right before the last battle of the Revolutionary War, a meeting here with the French general, who also didn't have free speech, who also was fact, cheap in nature, slave per what came before all modern nations, to build roles with the Campus Martius's manifest value relationship to it as the nature revealed manifest value of the Campus Martius before its criminal reengineering. As value already that was positive relationship to itself. So from that point, they knew they could build a way to maintain nature perpetually demonstrating life progressions. I mean, negative value nature progressions, Lethe of Hades, value going from here, which is our identity. This is inter-science obfuscated. Lost course returns. Oh no, so the guns. The kids are in a trap tied to database relationships too, where they're stacking illusions, and then they're having collusion between interbranch families maintained as victims, but as victim predators juxtaposed with overt criminal enterprises, influences, and with nations legalized criminal enterprises juxtaposed here, even though they were the ones that were still to the defense of forced, maintained, abridged, and breaching influenced treatments of our sciences, uncharged, and within as the roles with fact, treating nature, slavery, and not letting people be able to explain it as what it really is, forcing them to pretend they believe passions and physical delusions and sequence shifts and needs to be knaves that aren't true. So nothing grew. The environment can't speak for nature. Environment is value, but not as nature. In other words, only value as nature. So if your conversations about everyone only agree on, that's the reason, because but it's worse because this is a method that is lying to people, that is making comfort to what their to database illusion stacking roles that are being exploited on and off campuses by what maintains this facilitated in every modern nation, areas and states in collusion with and as knave fact treatment nature relationships and unrealized rumor spreading by branches and by all that private tied to them, and tied to them not allowing demonstration of their roles with simultaneously the same groups crime acts and methods recorded against each age of fact treatment nature. This is how it is maintained manifest, where our elderly home, people go into it. These are agreements still sick. Those are not our means. In every modern nation, we agree. See, but we have what agrees, not force and face sides, because it was raised to jobs uncharged. Within that premise treatment, breaching roles uncharged. Physical delusion propagation roles uncharged. I'm not a doctor. We have this recorded. crime acts and methods with them, spreading rumors, telling the people to apply things too. So evidence reception nature is online, tied to the crimes with all these shootings, tied to a crime method where they know they're forcing sustained juxtaposed natures of crimes because they were facilitated to it originally. Now they have lie, progression, cover-up natures needing to pretend they believe things about passions about what they see about people's stuff online. In other words, they brought up this with sequence shifts. They brought up this with rape threats. They brought up this stacking database delusion, witness fabrication acts, interbranch, collusion, intercity, all these time impositions. They brought this up first. Now they're still sequence shifting. They're not allowing sequence shift. These are ones in Connecticut courts tied to people tied to the state judicial branch office, to the state prison offices at the end of Franklin Avenue, tied to Tacaccio, recorded and confessed, tied to a Ray Colo, and all kinds of people who made confessions about them tied to a criminal justice rackets, drugs with some kind of guy named Joe, also a Joe DeMoro, but a Joe that was involved with a speaker theft. What do you call it? Put it in my car. A Jeremy Grohl. These are people, and a Subway Bajerio. These are people recorded and confessed involved with interbranch crimes of people also associated with kids of all juxtaposed natures. Now, outside of court and facilitated to database delusion stacking crime methods in courts, where they have they have women and men with mental health care doctors and investigators pretending things that are recorded that weren't, forging names. This is all recorded, but then they pretend that they don't realize that. In other words, this is also because this was facilitated by what they don't understand about through lie, progression, cover-up natures, needs, and roles. Originally and still criminally foreign influenced. So we don't have people. So if they don't have the. So in other words, the sequence shifts are important, tied to people in Connecticut, federal criminals, and a number of them recorded with crimes with kids that grew up around me, with recorded crimes with databases on and off campuses, with confessions, with crime method, not letting things reported and stacking other in databases or forcing everyone just to give up and to say that, pretend that they're fake. They direct fake sides of issues because everyone was raised as victim predators against correlation nature, which is a Trinity, and this is needed to be obfuscated, not just by per means they understand, because down to the finite. In other words, we have everything is broke, and that we have the forced nations the same way, because the breaching method knew that all modern nations would be taking the suit and tie roles. Counters to it also not understanding. That's why no one defended the beginning of the crime. No one defended the beginning of the Old Testament. Everyone stayed with the trap. Lets that insidious nature keep its religions. No one even lets that recorded their criminal uses of interreligious platforms by interbranch, recorded, facilitated, juxtaposed with overt legalized criminal enterprise nations, policing of ourselves and markets, positions, all areas, juxtaposed with overt criminal enterprises, facilitated originally for this weird house and how we are set up to be a fact-cheaping nature with a value nature relationship to itself. Fact-cheaping nature is value, where value is in nature. So with environment, if it's value as in nature, it has a value nature relationship to itself. So you can't value nature unless you're talking about that value-nature relationship to itself, the Trinity. This is the value-nature relationship that the cell nucleus and the cell body has to the cell wall. That's why the cell walls share that cell wall value, body of value. That's why we have the individual also has attachments to both sexes and parents. Attachments to the species body value, Trinity. Earth, water, gas, space, manifest, Trinity. Trinity's relationship to itself. What is overall up? What is overall right to left? Overall down is beyond us. We should not be. We have a value nature system. So anyways, when they're playing the video games, this is in conjunction with their time as value, as a value nature relationship to itself, as a value progressions value. Each age of fact treatment nature. As value as a correlation nature, as a Trinity. But what was is beyond our control. At the same time, value before, as this, as a relationship to itself, an identity of value discernment system. English was revealed to teach. And then with Latin below it and Arabic above it, we're not dependent. See, the controversial parts of the Quran, in physics over here, it's a different system, but it wouldn't go. But in other words, in prison, if it's from a prisoner's rights, in other words, when Saint Nicholas was put in prison by criminal prisons, which we were recorded to have tied to crime methods and life progression, cover up nature's needs and roles. Juxtaposed intermilitary corruption, juxtaposed originally stayed criminally foreign influence. This was in relationship not just to George Washington with having to leave slavery here, wanting us to explain about his stolen voice, about ours, how they're stealing it, recorded it, doing it, how they're influencing victim predator, animal motivations through the people who are most insidious with the suit and ties, in collusion with it, facilitated, interbranch. Because the victim predators, all different natures juxtaposed. This is multi-front, making people, it's adapting systemically. The breaching method recorded is systemically mostly using the women and men associated with, especially the women associated with psychology, recorded with crime roles and with methods of attachments to the value nature system that is a tactically ulterior from the one that is by our fact treatment natures that is progressively being valued, sabotaged. So the real impositions, the real causes of things like poverty have nothing to do, in other words, with the fact treatment nature. So what they call solutions. Those are roles hiding the breaching method. That is forcing sustained, distinctly and non-distinctly intercity, consciously maintain criminally foreign influenced victim predator fact treatment natures, also tied to the cliques associated with the North End of Hartford, Park Street impositions through time, tied to the child campuses, South End of Hartford child campuses, with Scalora family, other police forms tied to them, and a Phil Colo. People recorded, confessed, involved with men and women with crimes of various natures with kids, plus them tied to sex offenders, plus them trying to pretend they know me through time, plus them tied to doing that with on-off campuses, database delusion stacking with the same cliques. When I was in high school, when I was in college, still trying to deal with them, still being extorted because we're interbranch, internation, like Puerto Rico criminal justice, they have recorded and confessed crime rolls with the rackets and stuff on and uses of the north end of Hartford, of color and of fake care against what they pretend is prejudice interbranch, recorded, pretending they forgot things that were proven. Pretending they have defenses of identities tactically ulterior from identity's course as value, as the value of the progression of our value too, and of the value before. So the shootings, the kids are going in there, but this is tied to them at school, where natures of crime intercampus needed to defend positions in relationship to inter-religious uses of evidence treatments already criminally foreign influence, already people in jails that shouldn't be, already people hurt, sustained by court cases with crime acts and crime methods, database illusion stacking, stealing each people's voice, leaving database illusion stacking, crime method, knowing that it can affect like exploitation of anomalies, or what is it? I'll have to look up anomaly. With reception of the rules about how teachers are reported, mandated, obligated to report certain things. See, but then they're in conjunction with on-off campus policing that is maintained originally and progressed criminally foreign influence, needed to cover live progressions, tied to all kinds of even preemptive crimes and cases, crimes with positions with campuses, on-off campuses, maintained per a whole bunch of crime methods they have juxtaposed to keep criminal foreign influences juxtaposed with other natures of fact-cheating nature, slavery and hostage, and theft. And that was in conjunction with cases, with them directing with criminals in collusion with the people that are putting them away. And that as a means to pretend other. Because that was just facilitated to their fact-cheating nature needs by what is maintaining. It knew that all modern nations would have to blame related negative value nature progressions causing other things. Blame the cause on others. Blame the cause on themselves. As maintained by a breaching method that all modern nations lost to is recorded, manifest within as the value of our relationship to means and real threats. You know what I'm saying? It's not mutually assured destruction. Mutually assured destruction, pretending that, in other words, are the sciences with the fact-cheating nature value, with democracy in its mind, with republic in its mind, with our founders in its mind, especially when glorified, not correctly, which they don't do, because they're raised victim predator roles, justifying glorifications of interbranch sophistication that was maintained as tools preventing sophistication per what originally and still is maintaining worse than terrorism and worse than the overt criminal enterprises and worse than the private ones juxtaposed unrealized. because then we don't have the law, mandated law being let foul. Because we have interbranch actors recorded criminally foreign influence with doctors, kids, with crimes in military, juxtaposed drug clicks needing to cover up lie progressions, a lot of bad things. They have to really hurt. They have to use their kids to, and that's valued more and more within as states and areas in collusion. So they have rackets where they're forced not to. The kids are forced to go along with the theater, and more that has to be valued by the professionals that are not giving up the federal agencies, family members and stuff like that, influences roles with retired and standing detectives. And they don't understand how they were juxtaposed with the sickest natures. Child sex offenders recorded